Morning, everyone. It's good to be back with you. We want to talk today a little bit about what it means to be courageous and to stand for Christ as we unleash the gospel in ourselves and in our families. Our concern today initially is about the widows. In the law of God, in the Torah, especially the book of Exodus, chapter 22, there is an admonition. Chapter 22, verse 21 to 23. You shall not wrong any widow or orphan. If you ever wrong them, and they cry out to me, I will surely listen to their cry. My wrath will flare up. Now, there's more to that sentence that I'm not saying. My wrath will flare up, God says. We hear about two widows today. The widow of Zarephath and her son, whose generosity toward the prophet Elijah led to a miraculous source of flour and oil to sustain them through the drought that was going on in their land for that next year. And in Mark, we hear of another widow who gave so generously to the temple treasury that she earned the admiration of Jesus himself. Two widows. One, a non-Jewish person, one, a Jewish person. Two widows whose names we do not know, but who are pointed up for us because they responded to God's generosity and love. And one of the things that I like for us to think about today is their absolute trust in God. It was absolute. The first widow, is saying, we only have, after this little thing that I'm going to fix for my son, we're just going to die. Elijah told her what to do, and she, thinking that he was someone important, thinking that he's a prophet of some sort, not knowing exactly who he was, did what he suggested. And she and his son had enough for a year. And this other woman, either she's crazy or she has total confidence in God. And the way Jesus points it out, this is a woman with total confidence in God. Either one of these people, either one of those widows, I don't think I have enough energy or faith to do what they did. Here you are on the brink of death at Zarephath, and then you fix food for this stranger, and you don't have enough food even for yourself and your son. And then look at this widow who gives her last for God, for the treasury of the temple. Somehow we are to understand that we are to give our total trust and our absolute confidence in God. And it has to be absolute. It's not a halfway thing here. It has to be absolute. Throughout the diocese today, people are talking about unleashing the gospel in ourselves, and unleashing the gospel in our families is the theme that various preachers around the diocese are speaking of today. To unleash the gospel. What does it mean to unleash the gospel? Nobody had it tied up as far as I know. But to unleash the gospel, we're talking about bringing God's love to all people in a way which moves them to come to know God, which moves them in their hearts to come to know who the Lord is. It means being an active listener, an active speaker, an active doer, an active teacher, someone who can motivate and urge people to believe. Urge people to believe. The widow of Zarephath and the widow whom Jesus points out has the presence of God in their hearts. Now, what I'd like for us to look at are two experiences that I had when I was in Ghana last week. Last week, as I was flying here, we left, it was 90-something, and I got here, it was 42, I think, something like that. experiences that made sense to me, and as I talk about them now, I'm hoping that they'll make some sense to you. It was on Sunday, and I think it was around, I forget what Sunday it was 2 Sundays ago. We went to Mass at the University of Ghana, the University Chapel in Cape Coast. What impressed me were all the students who were there. The University Chapel is about as big as this church is, so a little chapel, but about as big as this church. And it was packed with students, packed with students. And one of the things I noticed was the students who were not able to get in because of the overflow had chairs in the back. They couldn't see anything, they could hear everything. And what did they experience? They experienced what was heard, but their attention, they were dignified. There's a very polished atmosphere about them. And when the Mass was over, and that first Mass at 8 o'clock went all the way up until almost 10 o'clock, because the former Archbishop likes to talk, they tell me, they were there rapt in attention. Rapt in attention. When our Mass began at 10 o'clock, when we went there for, it was well planned, well practiced, and people were honest in how it was presented. 50 young people made up their choir, and they sang not only in Latin, but they also sang traditional songs. It was a joyous celebration. Now that just says to me, when we unleash the gospel in our own mind and in our own heart, we have to be motivated, and we have to have a sense of trust and love in our own hearts. And we have to have the experience of knowing that music can move us. I was told 2 weeks ago that our choir here was outstanding. 2 weeks ago, I heard it was absolutely fantastic. The experience and the love and the joy that you exhibited made everyone here in the parish excited and happy and joyful, as we're supposed to be on Sunday. We have to make sure that when people come to visit us, that they experience hope and that they experience the joy of knowing a person who loves God. Now, we all exhibit that in many different ways. We all have our approach to all of those kinds of things. But somehow, when we come to church, this is our public worship. It's our public stance. Now, those of us who know each other realize that so-and-so is having a bad day, and we can ignore this or understand that and keep on going. But it's the visitors who come who don't know that. And so visitors need to experience God. And they need to experience God through your joy in your own heart, even if you're not feeling joy in your own heart. That's the whole point of this. Somehow, when I come to the presence of God through the Word, through Eucharist, somehow that has to change me. At least let it change us for a couple of hours anyway, before we get back to the normal. But let it change us bit by bit by bit. And the whole point, of worship is, all of us are stuck in our own stuff. And the older you get, the more stuck I get. I don't know about you, but I get more and more, it seems, steeped into things. We are to gradually be changed. That's what we're after. We are to be changed. And, it isn't easy to teach an old dog new tricks, as they say. So I would say this, that my first experience there, that was really a lasting one for me, was the experience of the worship that I had at the University of Cape Coast. The students there and the people there, we even at the end had a woman to demonstrate how she carries these babies on her back, how she does all of that. Anyway, we have pictures of that. It was the experience of people who love God and who are honest in their love for God. And to see young people who are our hope, obviously, is just a marvelous, marvelous thing. So, unleashing the gospel in me happened because of that experience. And what I'm saying is, I'm hoping that as we worship each week, week after week, that we begin to understand how important it is that our worship be excellent. How important it is that we do the things we need to do so that when others visit us, they'll have the experience of God in their hearts. Second experience was Cape Coast Castle. And bear with me if I go into these gruesome details for a little bit anyway. But Cape Coast Castle was built by the Swedes in 1664, and later on the British came. So it was the October 25th when we went to Cape Coast Castle. The tour was like 3.5 hours. It was a long tour, and it's a big place. There must have been about 25 people in our group, and they had various groups at different stages along the way. What's important is this, as I thought about it. Cape Coast Castle, the place where African groups were brought together, and from that place they went aboard ship. It's the founding place for a new ethnic group, the African American. It's a new ethnic group. Why would you say that? Because you had people from many different traditional societies, people with many different languages, people who did not know each other, and you have families that were disentangled and destroyed. Personal self-esteem was radically altered, and people were thrown together in the hold of a ship and in darkness for months before reaching Brazil, the Caribbean, or South Carolina or Georgia. What was not killed was an inner spiritual light of those who were stuck in the bowels of that ship. When you think about it, that was the time when people did not think that Africans had souls, that they were just property. We all know that. But what is interesting is to think of this one individual in our church history who made a very, very big difference. That individual was St. Peter Claver. Peter Claver was ordained in 1616, and for 37 years, he and his associates would go upon these slave ships, which people said you could smell from miles away that they were coming. He would go upon those slave ships, minister to the sick. And here you have people not knowing who in the world is this, what is this person doing? For 37 years, he did that work, baptizing people, bringing people to the Lord as best he could according to 17th century attitudes, not our attitudes, 17th century attitudes. But what was he doing? Bringing Christ to people who do not know what he was talking about. Gradually creating a community of people in Cartagena, Colombia. So not everybody thought that Africans had no souls. So now what does this mean? Unleash the gospel right here in our parish among our families is the task given to us today. What does that mean? As I said, I think African American families had troubles in the beginnings because of all that stuff that went on. But of course now it's 4 centuries later. So what's the deal today? How do we bring the gospel to African American families, but to all the families in our parish? How do we do that? When we were there in the dungeon, one of the things that the guide said is that, you're standing on the DNA of thousands of people. I never heard it expressed that way. Standing on the DNA of thousands of people. As a parish, though, how do we unleash the gospel right here and right now? First of all, I'd like to say, the example in the scripture today is an example that we should hold dear to us. Absolute trust in God. What that absolute means for each one of us here is going to be different. But somehow it's an absolute trust. This woman and her son, they're going to die. And yet she trusts in Elijah. She prepares the food for him. They live. Then Jesus, after dealing with those scribes and Pharisees and all of their astonishing approach to living, points out this one woman, and he says, this woman gave all she had. Now, is that standard insane or what? That's the question you have to answer. It's a question I have to answer. Is that an insane request? Giving all you have. So, absolute trust is number one as we work to bring the gospel to the families in our parish. Second, be concerned about all people who have experienced injury. All people who have experienced injury, we must be in communion with. Think of the Jews of the Holocaust. Think of the Jews of last week at the Tree of Life Temple in Pittsburgh. Think of the horrible treatment of minorities all around the world. We have to be in sync and in sympathy, and we have to be encouraging and aware of everyone who suffers in the world. We must pray. Third point, pray. Pray earnestly for good family life. Talking to one of the priests there, we were saying, Father Robin and Father Don and I were saying, what do you think, what are the particular problems? The first problem was teenage pregnancy. The second problem was the taking of young girls into slavery, modern day slavery. You know, that's something that we hear about in Michigan. Four, we must involve ourselves in all kinds of programs that bring understanding to families. Those members of our families who are in prison, those who are troubled and involved with AA, the opioid crisis and epidemics, all of those things, we have to involve ourselves in being involved with these various hope groups that hope people. And I think our fifth point is, be available to families in need. And we do that here with our St. Vincent de Paul, our Vine and Branches ministry, we do that. But people who need health care, and people who need to be safe, and all of those types of things that families need. And the other thing that I would say is that we need to follow up on called and gifted. Remember that? Remember that? How many weeks ago was that? Called and gifted. We need to respond. Benny is working on calling people. We need to respond. See, all of this is how the gospel can be unleashed within our families. So today we want to think about our families, think about some of the troubles and difficulties, but think about ways and means by which we can bring health to our families and spiritual health to our families. Brothers and sisters, in the end, and you might have heard this before, this is not new, we have to work as if everything depended upon us, because it does. And then we have to pray as if everything depended upon God, which it does. Amen.